All right, hello. Thank you for joining me. Here to have a little bit of a discussion about a lot of people lately. There's a lot of issues going on with fake service dogs, the fake service dog issue, and there's all kinds of stuff happening. There's people pushing for laws um, to punish people for faking for pretending that their dog is a service dog when it is not. And one of the big arguments that's going around is that we should have a national service dog registry. So I'm going to address that. And I've written some notes. I'm going to break it down one bite at a time here because it's a big issue and it's a complex issue. But at the same time, it's actually a really simple issue. So the first thing I want to point out is that dogs are not the problem. Yes, untrained animals in public places where they don't belong cause a problem, absolutely. But the dog is not the issue. Okay, what the issue is these people who are entitled and think that they should be able to bring their dog everywhere they go. So they spend $30 online and buy a fake registry and get a vest. And these fake registries, you can spend anywhere from, $10 or $15 for an ID card to several hundred for a vest and all kinds of great stuff. But that doesn't mean your dog's a service dog. And they do this because they feel like they're entitled to take their dog anywhere. And so you get, Fifi the Wonder Poodle tucked under some lady's arm in a restaurant, sitting on the table, running around, yapping at people, piddling on the floor. And the real issue here is that what these people are doing is pretending that they're disabled. Okay, number one fact is that the ADA protects the disabled person's right to use a service dog as part of their treatment, part of assistance for their disability. If you're not disabled, you do not have a service dog, no matter how well trained it is. If you're not disabled, you do not have access protection under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is an equal rights act intended to allow equal access for all disabled people everywhere anybody else goes. Um, so, making all these comments about all fake service dogs, it's not a fake service dog problem. It is a people problem. It is a bad people who want to take advantage of a law that was written to protect the rights of disabled individuals for their own desires. Okay, it's not a dog problem. It's a people problem. It is a personal responsibility issue. It is an ethics issue. It is people who are unethical and who refuse to take personal responsibility because they feel entitled. They feel that they should be able to take their dog wherever they want. Okay, so making these laws and making it about dogs is the wrong direction to go. The problem's not dogs. The problem is people. The problem is people taking untrained dogs, using the excuse that it's a service dog, and causing havoc for those of us who have taken the time, whether through an organization or cooperatively training or training our service dogs ourselves, which we have the right to do under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we've taken the time and we've trained our animals and we keep on top of our dogs. We work tirelessly day in and day out. Our lives revolve around our service dog. That dog is a lifeline. That dog is what helps us make it, what gives us independence. And it causes problems for us. It really does. Untrained little yap dogs in the store are an issue. Okay, but you can't blame the dogs. The dog didn't walk itself in there. The dog didn't put itself in a fake vest. The dog didn't pay $35 on a registry for itself. The person standing next to the dog arguing that it's my service dog, I can take it anywhere, is the problem. So first and foremost, we need to get off of calling it the fake service dog problem. I suggest we call it the service dog faker problem, which puts the issue in the hands of the person with the dog rather than on the dog. Okay, we don't need to regulate the dogs. We need to educate the people who are presuming disability in order to do what they feel they're entitled to do. So I want to break this down. I'm going to look at it from a couple different directions. First of all, I want to talk about who's behind the push for all these laws that are popping up in different states, and who's behind the push for a registry. Um, Tam, we'll talk about that. That's a good question, and that's a nebulous area of the law. We'll get to that. But let me back to it. Who's pushing for these laws to punish people for pretending that their dog's a service dog when it isn't? And if you do a little tiny bit of research, it doesn't take much, but just a little bit of digging, you discover that there are two organizations, foreign agencies, that are for-profit agencies in their country, but coordinate a bunch of nonprofits here in the United States. And those two organizations are the ADI, Assistance Dogs International, and the IAADP, International Association of Assistance Dog Providers. Those are, aside from the Guide Dogs, International Guide Dogs Foundation, I think they're called. Those are the two primary international service dog accrediting agencies. So my first question is, why are they pushing for this? And if you really boil it down, it's real simple. We get more laws on the books where it's illegal to take your dog, to fake that you have a service dog, and people are starting to lean towards, because all these fake incidents are happening, people are starting to lean toward, well, maybe we should have a registry. Well, who does a registry benefit? Follow the money. Who does a registry benefit? These two foreign organizations. They have offices in the U.S., but they are not U.S. companies. And they are for-profit, not nonprofits. Why do they benefit? Because people will have to go to them and only to them in order to get their dogs registered as a service dog. It's a money-making ploy. You think that this is a conspiracy theory? I challenge you to Google it. Look up who's backing these bills in these states. I guarantee you, IAADP or ADI are involved. That's an issue. Foreign companies have no business dictating U.S. policy. Okay? They don't. This is our country. These are our laws, and this is our rights that they're threatening to infringe upon. Okay? So, especially for those of us in the service dog using community, we need to understand that we're under attack by for-profit industry. And the fact that there is a service dog industry is part of the problem. Okay, but you got to remember, these organizations charge thousands and thousands of dollars for dogs. I've seen prices anywhere from $35,000 to over $60,000 for a service dog. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. You can work cooperatively with a trainer who helps you work with your dog and train your dog and spend less than $3,000 over the period of a couple of years to thoroughly train your dog. And you're paying monthly, or you're paying per lesson. You're not paying $35,000, $45,000, $50,000. You don't need to. Not only that, but these accredited organizations, you have to remember too, these guys are operating off of a waiting list. I challenge you to find an ADI or an IAADP organization specifically for veterans, because most of them are for veterans, who doesn't have at least a 2-year waiting list. If you can find them, let me know. Okay? When you're looking for a place to get a service dog, look at the organization and figure out what their intention is. Are they trying to make money, or are they there to help assist disabled people? Are they there to assist disabled veterans in getting it and training at PTSD service dog, or are they there to make themselves look good? Okay, these organizations that parade veterans out into the center line of the basketball court or the 50-yard line of a football field to present him with a service dog, make him jump through hoops and go through a dog and pony show. All right, if this is a disabled veteran with PTSD, the last place he needs to be is in the middle of a stadium with 150, 200,000 people. Okay? And it's an ugly, hard truth in this world, but if it's a nonprofit working to benefit disabled people and disabled veterans specifically, if they're doing it right, they're in the red. They're not making any money. because the goal is to help the disabled person, not to help themselves. Um, you can look up where the money goes for all 501c3s in the United States. It's federal law. If they're a 501c3, they have to record that. You can do just a tiny bit of investigation. I will put together a document and get it into the PTS Dog group, showing you the resources, how to look up what's going on with your 501c3. Do some research, do a little looking, figure out what kind of training methods do they use. Are they giving you prong collars and shock collars and telling you to beat the dog into behaving? Or are they teaching you positive reinforcement? Are they working with you and doing a cooperative training process where you learn to train your dog as your dog is learning? That cooperative training process where you're responsible for the dog 24/7, not some organization, some third party. That's the key for PTSD treatment, is that personal connection to your dog, that bond, that unbreakable, immutable bond. If they're not training in such a way that you're directly involved, 5 years down the line, when your dog's 6 or 7 years old, and you've been working with that dog for, 5 years, and the dog starts, because it's aging, the dog starts misbehaving. Are you going to have the skills or the tools to be able to either, one, deal with it and train through it yourself, or two, are you going to recognize that there's an issue and be able to find a trainer to help work through it? Are you going to be able to go back to that nonprofit that you waited 2 years for to get the dog, and are they going to be able to help you? Will they help you? Most of the ADI organizations, I'm not sure about IAADP, but most of the ADI organizations own the dog for the first 3 years you're handling it. They have the right to take that dog back at any time during those 3 years. Again, ask the question, what's the purpose of the organization? To help disabled people, to help disabled veterans, or to help themselves? I guarantee you image is a serious issue when it comes to ADI and IAADP organizations. They're not nonprofits. They're there to make money for the ADI and the IAADP. Think about it. Does a foreign body have any business lobbying to try to corner the market in the United States for the right to train service dogs? It is your right as a disabled person to train service dog, as guaranteed by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So let's go a step further. If we're going to make a national registry, where's the money going to come from? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to maintain it? How do you get registered? Do you have to go take a test? To what standards? Whose standards are we going to set to take a test? Well, there are American standards. The American Kennel Club has great behavior standards in their Canine Good Citizenship, Advanced Canine Good Citizenship, and Urban Canine Good Citizenship courses. Why aren't we using American standards? Why are we going with Assistance Dog International standards or IAADP standards? We have an American standard. What's wrong with it? Second of all, what about task training standards? Specifically, especially for PTSD service dogs, the tasks my dog perform to assist me are completely different than the next guy. Completely different. Because our symptomology is different, our response to outside stimuli is different, and what we respond to back in order to try to keep ourselves from having issues when we're in a public place are completely different. Some people need to train their dog to give it a single bark or two to get their attention when they start to dissociate. Okay? That's a task. The dog is trained to do that, to alert their person that there's something going on and that they need to refocus on the dog. Okay? Me, I train my dog not to bark in public. He doesn't. But he does come and either sit on me or lean against me to get my attention, to let me know that I'm starting to stress out. But that's what works for me. I have a 100-pound dog because when I was at my worst, I needed a dog that was big enough to get my attention no matter what. And he's had to do so. He reared up, put his paws on my shoulders, knocked me flat on my back, and laid on me until I was calm enough to get out of the situation, rather than me laying some knucklehead out flat and ending up in cuffs. He saved me that day. A lot of these organizations would say that dog's misbehaving. No, that dog was doing exactly what he's been trained to do. which is stop me before I harm myself or others. But what it looks like for me is completely different than what it looks like from next time. There is no one set list of these are the tasks that a dog can perform. There are a lot of suggestions, and there are some great lists out there, but those don't always apply to everybody. Those apply to, this task, and this task apply to me, but that may not work for you in any way, shape, or form. So where's the standard? Where are we going to set this standard? Who sets it? How's the government going to say, well, only this works to help with this issue? Dissociation, only deep pressure therapy helps with dissociation. Well, no, not at all. Pulling me out if I'm disassociating and getting me out of the store so I'm somewhere safe, that works. Okay? It's up to the disabled individual to discover what their needs are and train the dog to meet those needs. It's not up to some outside governing body of any form, whether it's the U.S. government or the ADI or the IAADP. Everybody is an individual. Every dog who works with their individual person is an individual. You can't standardize that. There is no standard. There shouldn't be a standard. We're not robots. We don't fit into cookie cutters. We're individuals, and we have individual needs that we need to train to with our dogs. And let's break it down. Okay, so we have this government registration agency for service dogs. Well, is there going to be a registration office in every town? Well, that's going to be too expensive and hire too many people. Okay, so there's going to be one or two centralized registration stations in a state. Okay, well, I live 600 miles away from the town where the registration station would be because I'm in East Texas, and the only registration stations are in West Texas. So who's going to pay to get me there and back? Who's going to pay to put me up overnight? 600-mile drive is a long drive. Okay, where's the testing going to take place? Is there going to be a test center? Who's going to pay to operate that? Who's going to pay for the upkeep? Who's going to pay to maintain the paperwork? Where's all this money coming from? We're at a budget deficit as it is. And you want to create a whole nother agency? Imagine the DMV, but for dogs. Think about that. And then let's think about this. Disabled people have the right to use service dogs. But when you take those service dog users and you isolate them and specifically require that those individuals have to register their durable medical equipment, which is what the service dog is considered under the ADA, then they're no longer equal. Then you're segregating them. The whole point of the ADA was desegregation. And now you're going to require segregation legally. You're segregating the disabled people who use a service dog. That's not the reason that the law was written. The law is about equality, not making some people more equal than others or making people less equal than others. Desegregation was the whole point of the law, making a level playing field for all disabled people. Okay, and the argument, I've had the argument put to me, well, all medical equipment has to be tested and certified before it's put into use. Yeah, the manufacturers have to test and certify it. Who manufactures service dogs? It is not the responsibility of the disabled person using the wheelchair to certify and test their wheelchair. It's the manufacturer who comes up with a product. Okay, but a dog is not a product. A service dog is a partner. It's a teammate. It is something that you have to work towards. If you're working with a human, the same thing. There's still a learning curve where the two of you have to learn to work together in order to fulfill your needs. What's the same with the dog? There is no way to certify. And not only that, but like I mentioned before, training never ends. Okay, the dog that I handle today on a day-to-day basis, go shopping with, go to stores, go out to dinner and things, the dog I take with me today is not the same dog that he was 5 years ago. They grow, they change, they progress just like people do. The needs I have for my service dog today are different than the needs I had for him 7 years ago when I decided I was going to have a service dog. And dogs are not robots. They're animals. Handling a service dog is an active activity. It is an activity. It is a verb. It is involved. You don't just turn your dog on and walk out the door and expect the dog to robotically behave the whole time. You can't. If you do, you're fooling yourself. You work interactively with your dog, symbiotically almost. That dog provides support for you because of your disabilities that you're unable to provide for yourself. In return, you provide guidance, health care, food, water, love to that dog. You work together. That dog helps complete the PTSD sufferer and fill in the gaps that PTSD caused. It is a progress. It is a progressive relationship. It never stops. Training never stops. There's always something new to learn when you're out with your dog. If you're not learning, he is. And if he's not learning, you are, or she. Now let's talk a little bit about that segregation idea and think about this. What other disabled group, wheelchair users, hearing aid users, cane users, any of that, what other disabled group bears the responsibility of educating the public about their rights? You realize that service dog handlers basically have to be experts on the ADA, have to understand the law, have to understand our law, what provides, what gives us the right to take that dog there, has to understand what the business can do in case a dog isn't misbehaved. We are, whether we want to be or not, we're stuck with the position of being ambassadors for the Americans with Disabilities Act, because people don't understand the law. They don't know what the limitations are. They don't know when they can ask that a dog be removed. But you know what? It's written right there in the ADA that businesses do have the right to ask that a disruptive animal be removed. If your dog's alerting every 30 seconds and you trained it to bark because it wouldn't get your attention otherwise, and the dog continues to bark at you, that has become disruption. And when the dog becomes disruptive, at least in the case of PTSD sufferers, 99% of the time it's because the handler, me, isn't catching on to what the dog is trying to tell me. And so as that dog feels the need to escalate because it's not getting the result it was trained to, okay, the dog starts to lose a little bit of control and starts to panic. Again, handling a service dog is an activity. It is a verb. It is an active state. When you are handling your dog, you are interacting with that animal. And when you don't listen to your dog is when there's problems. Dog's trying to let you know something's going on, you're not listening, you have a problem. And that can become disruptive. Now, businesses can ask that a dog be removed on a case-by-case basis. Your dog can be sick and have a bad day. It's a living creature. Okay, when that happens and you're asked to remove your dog, first of all, the business cannot deny you their services. Say you're at the grocery store, your dog's having a bad day, they can ask that you remove the animal, but they cannot deny you the ability to finish your shopping trip. You may be unable to do it because you don't have your dog. But then when you come back the next day and the dog's not having a bad day, okay, they can't say you got to get that dog out of there. Okay. That has to be on a case-by-case basis. And that's because the ADA does understand, the writers understood, dogs have a bad day, okay? So just because you had a bad experience at the Walmart on Tuesday doesn't mean you can't go back and finish your shopping, Wednesday afternoon with your service dog. It just means you need to pay attention to your service dog. You need to actively handle your dog. You need to know that your dog is trained to the degree that you can take it to Walmart and that it was just a bad day the other day. Okay. Now, a lot of the responsibility lays here on the handler. Okay, when you walk in with your service dog, you are responsible for that animal's behavior during the entire time that you're engaged with the public. If you're ignoring your dog, if you're not paying attention, you need to check yourself. You need to walk back out and reset yourself and come back in. Or you need to leave and come back another day. If you're having such a rough day that you can't handle your dog, you shouldn't be out there in the first place. I do this to myself. There are days when I get ready to go, I think I'm going to go to the store, and I turn around and I do a self-check and I think about it and I go, you know what, I can't handle this today. And we go for a walk instead, and I just put it off until the next day. Know yourself well enough, and that again is part of that process. You learn this as you're training your service dog. You begin to recognize what's going on in your own mind, what's going on in your head. Okay, you get to the point where you can do a self-assessment and say, you know what, I'm doing pretty good today. I think we can handle Walmart. Or you know what, this is not a good Walmart day. I'm not even going to try. And you know what? Spend the day playing with your dog. It'll get your head better. So I'm going to go back to my first point, and then I'm going to start taking questions. My first point was the problem is not the dogs. The fake service dog problem is the wrong name. The problem is not the dogs. The problem is the people who are presuming disability in order to fulfill their entitlement and take their little yap dogs everywhere. That's the issue. The problem's not the dog. The problem's the people. We need to regulate the people. How do we regulate the people? By teaching them. Education is the key to solving this issue, not more laws, not making life harder for disabled people. We have a tough enough time. I tell you what, I love my service dog. I love Skeeter to death. He's my brother. He's my buddy. He is my best friend. But I would give it all back to not need him in order to go do the grocery shopping. I really would. No sane person wants to be disabled. And what those people who are faking disability in order to take Fifi the Wonder Poodle everywhere with them are doing is presuming disability. Maybe they do need to get their heads checked. No sane person wants to be disabled. I don't want to be disabled. I use my service dog because I am disabled and I need him. If I didn't need him, that would be fantastic. He would just be a pet and he wouldn't have to work all the time. But the fact is he does. The fact is he has saved my life more than once because I took the time and the effort to decide that I wanted to live. And I worked very, very hard to train him so that he would be able to do what he does for me, both at home and in public. Nobody sane wants to be disabled, but I'll tell you what, they sure as heck like to take advantage of the law that allows for equal opportunity for the disabled in order to get their way. And that's a sad state of our society that entitlement is creating an issue where now disabled people are faced with the possibility of being discriminated against because of the durable medical equipment that they use. That's sad. That's sad that the answer is throw more laws at it, make it a crime, regulate these people, make these people register. Making disabled people register, you know, that's happened before within the last 100 years. They ended up wearing armbands and then in camps. And they were slaughtered wholesale. Wasn't just the Jews that the Nazis killed, but they killed disabled too. They took the disabled people and put them in the same camps. That's how offensive it is to me, the idea of requiring a service dog registry so that I'm able to use my medical equipment. I'll tell you what, you want to do a little more research, do a little Googling, do a little research about what disabled veterans in Canada have to do in order to get a service dog. It will open your eyes. I have had people contact the page, Canadian citizens, who say, I really wish it was this way in Canada. I can't get a dog. I have to jump through too many hoops. It's almost a 3-year process just to get government approval. And then you have to have a dog that's guaranteed by one of these organizations, these foreign organizations. So you're looking at between 3 to 5 years to get a dog. That's unconscionable. What is that poor veteran doing during that time while he's being made to jump through hoops? You guys who use the VA know what it's like having to jump through hoops just to get the treatment, the medical care that we were guaranteed when we raised our right hand and signed a contract. And we want to make it worse for ourselves? Do not support registration for service dogs. While we're on that subject, there are registration sites out there. You can go buy a $35 ID card and tag or whatever. It's there. It's not recognized by the Department of Justice or the Americans with Disabilities Act. That piece of paper that you paid money for has zero legal bearing, none. The government doesn't recognize it. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a store owner, if you're a gatekeeper, as it's called at a store, and you have people bringing their dogs in and you ask, is that a service dog? And they whip out that little ID badge, that's the number one alert that that's not a real service dog. That's the number one bell and whistle that should go off, a red flag, when they pull out that little registration card. Okay? They're not required by law. They're not required by law for a reason, because it is discriminatory to do so. All right, I'm going to start in with questions, and Tamira had a really good one. If I can scroll back up. Sorry, my Tam, would you mind posing that question again? I'm not able to scroll back up. I'm trying. And while we're waiting on that, okay, Delta Kilo, any suggestions on finding a trainer that the VA will accept for physical disabilities? I had a trainer I was working with, and he has since had his own medical conditions get worse. Also, he lost his service dog and legal issues, and I don't feel safe being around him anymore. Delta Kilo, there's actually a trainer in Idaho in this discussion. Scroll back through the comments and see if you can find her post, and she may be able to help you. You can also, if you're a veteran, you can also look at tadsaw.org. You could even go talk to the trainer at the PetSmart or the Petco. Explain your situation, explain what's going on, and ask if they can help. They may not be able to do it under the guise of PetSmart or Petco, but they might be willing to work with you after hours. There are dog trainers everywhere. Go to your local AKC club. See if there's anybody who's willing to train you. You got to remember something. Task training for service dogs is essentially tricks. There are a lot of people who do it. The cues are different, but essentially it's tricks. For mobility type issues, if your dog's retrieving things for you and stuff like that, that's trick training. The real key, the biggest issue, the number one training need for service dog handlers has nothing to do with their tasks. It's their public access. It's how they behave when they're out in public. That's the number one issue for handlers, is taking the dog out in the public and having the dog behave appropriately. That's where most of your training lies, in exposure to all the different things, all the different stuff coming at you when you go to the grocery store, how to behave around people, how not to stick your nose in the meat case. That's the number one training issue. Training tasks is not hard. It's basically training tricks. For PTSD service dogs, it's a little different, because you're training the dog. The dog, first of all, you need to find the right dog that picks up on what's going on in your head. And then what you're doing is training that dog how to respond to that, what's going on in your head, in such a way that gets you out of your head. But it's still, again, that really is based on the bond that you form. That's but again, then what you're doing is you're taking, that's what the cue is, but it's still just a trick. And that's really what it is. These are aimed tricks. Doc says, what do you do if you and your dog are on point, however the business still asks you to leave? Doc, there's a couple ways you can handle that. First and foremost, know the law, know your rights. If they're refusing you service because you have a service dog, and that's an easily replaceable service, go somewhere else. Take your business elsewhere and complain about it at another time, not while you're hot and pissed because you're getting kicked out because of your service dog, even though there's no problems with the dog, even though the dog's not an issue. I've handled that problem both ways. Getting angry and upset and leaving and calling corporate. Leaving and calling corporate's always the better way. It may be an inconvenience, but that's usually the best way to handle that. If it's something like a mom and pop, or if it's egregious, there are two ways you can go about reporting it when you're denied access because of a service dog. Some states have their own version of disability rights section in their departments of justice. Try to report a business at the state level first. If some states don't have it. When states don't have it, then contact the Department of Justice Disability Rights branch. They actually have an 800 number you can call to report discrimination, and the Department of Justice will investigate and handle it. But first and foremost, clue number one, when you're denied access unjustly because of your service dog, turn around and walk out. Don't cause problems. If you get into a fight, like I talked about with Josh Durati on the radio show, if you get into something where the police are involved and you're put in cuffs, the police have no obligation to take your service dog with you. So what happens to the dog? Well, then the pound comes and gets the dog. And that creates a whole nother set of issues, whether you end up being released or going to jail. I mean, you just don't want to get that. It doesn't need to go there. Turn around, walk out, find another place, file a report later, file a complaint later, find a lawyer and sue them, talk to the ACLU. Don't get into a fight right there. David sees, yes, you can, if you have, the VA has a very, very complex and Byzantine process for getting a service dog. And it's a real pain in the butt. And a lot of veterans do not want to go the VA route because it's just another hoop. It's another red ass, forgive me, but I have to use the military term. It's another red ass that the VA makes you go through. You can get one. The way that they've written their decision on how they're providing them is if your disability restricts mobility. It has to be a mobility restriction. Now, it can be argued that the inability to do something like go shopping is a mobility restriction, and that's kind of a workaround that some VA doctors are willing to use to get a VA-provided service dog. However, again, those dogs are provided by ADI or ADI certified organizations, and you're still looking at a 2 to 3 year waiting list. Whereas if you go to some of the organizations outside of the VA and outside of the ADI organizations, you have little or no waiting list. If you need help finding a way to get a service dog, message the page, message PTS Dog, and I'll try to point you in the right direction and connect you with the right people. Okay, so Tamara is asking, how do you train a friendly pup in public so that the public doesn't think you're just bringing your pet in? Tam, that's a great question, and it's one I dealt with. Skeeter is extremely gregarious. He loves people. This dog absolutely loves attention. He loves people. He's gorgeous. He knows he's gorgeous. And, I spent, well, to be honest, every time we go out, I spend time working on him ignoring the fact that he loves people and wants to get loved on. There's nothing wrong with a friendly dog being your service dog. You want a friendly dog to be your service dog. You don't want your service dog to be a dog that's out there growling and grumping and, that's can be considered disruptive and aggressive, and they can ask you to remove an aggressive animal. You want a friendly dog, but you don't want a too friendly dog. So the way I overcame it with Skeeter, and I actually learned this in his basic canine good citizenship class, is when somebody approaches and asks if they can pet your dog, turn to your dog and make your dog sit. Then release your dog to go say hello. Okay, what this does is maintains complete control over the dog. It keeps your control and the dog's focus on you, even though the dog's going to go talk to somebody. That's the trick I used. Now, again, just like people are individuals, dogs are individuals. That might not always work, but that's what worked for my 100-pound Malamute. Was I make him sit, and he's gone so far. Now we've reversed it. He goes over. I tell him, Skeeter, go high. He goes over and then sits again, so that he's staying calm and focused. And he sits until I call him back, so until I release him. Okay, that keeps his energy levels down, it keeps him focused, and it maintains my control of the dog. It's okay for the dog to be gregarious. And I think I've mentioned this and explained it before. Skeeter's friendliness is a big part of what helped me overcome social isolation. It was because the dog wants to talk to people and see people, and people want to talk to and see the dog. And there are days when it's a no people day. And there are days when it's okay, when I could take a little time and talk to people and share with them. But the trick I learned with all 100 pounds of exuberance when he was much younger was to make him sit and be calm before I would release him to greet. And then we got to the point where it was easier for him to go over and sit, simply because of his just dealing with his size. He's a monster, and it's tough. It's tough sometimes. Okay, Heather, please watch the first part of the video. Heather Ainsworth says she thinks it's a good idea to have registration for people to take their dog in the public that's like a driver's license. I went through that at the beginning of the video. I'm sorry if people didn't pick up on it until later on, but it's not a good idea. It's discrimination. If you're advocating for discrimination, watch the first part of the video, please. Christoph Wayne says, yes, I found it. It's best thing to tell everybody, no, it's working. Yeah, it is. It is good. Good. If you need no interaction with people, you tell them no. They absolutely have the right. Oh, and the other question Tam had was marking a dog in training. Tam, again, we're looking at state laws here. Service dogs in training are not covered by the ADA. They're not protected, only working service dogs. States have the right to allow equal rights, access rights to service dogs in training. Some states do, some states don't. Some states require that you have an in-training patch on your dog while they're in training. But according to federal law, a service dog in training, you do not have access rights guaranteed. There's a couple of ways to work around that. Again, if your state allows it, get the patch and keep working. If your state doesn't allow it, train in dog-friendly places. Lowe's is dog-friendly, is pet-friendly. Pet Store Skeeter and I did a lot of training in Petco. We would just go to Petco to spend an hour working on focus, leave it, and not interacting with people and ignoring animals. We do that once or twice a week just to do it, just to work, just to get the work in. Hardware stores, most hardware stores are pet friendly. Ask. If you want to go to a place and you want to work your dog and you want to train that dog in that situation, call and ask the manager. Do a little homework, do a little research ahead of time before you go. I train Skeeter without a vest because Skeeter works whether he's wearing a vest or not. The whole point of a vest is to try to keep people away from him. And I'm going to tell you, I had an experience the other day. I went grocery shopping, and I had forgotten my vest. So all I have is this 2-inch collar that's got a big patch that says service dog on it. The problem is because of where the clip is at the top of the collar, service dog is underneath his chin, so you can't really see it anyway. So essentially, he went in naked. He didn't care. He's trained to work no matter what. I had less interaction with people with him not wearing a vest than I do when I put the vest on him, which is supposed to prevent interaction with people. The vest is a personal opinion. The vest is, I did start using a vest because of an issue I had at a national festival, because he was mobbed constantly and I couldn't walk 10 feet. It depends on where you are. It depends on the situation. It depends on the weather. There are days when I won't go out without the vest, and there are days when it's too hot to put the vest on him. It is not required. It's up to you whether you want to use it or not. If you do want to use it, it's up to you whether or not you put service dog in training or whatever. Again, some states can require that you mark a dog in training, either with a flag on their leash or something on their vest. They can do that because the ADA doesn't cover service dogs in training. Figure out what your local laws are. If you need help finding those local laws in the PTS Dog group, in the documents section, there is a document called Legal Resources. There's a link there to a website that's not a .gov website. It's not a government source, but I have checked them over and over, and every time I've looked up what they say, I think it's Service Dog Law, I think is the name of the site. They have this great breakdown grid of what the law is in each state. And every time I've double checked what their site says, it's been accurate. As far as I know, they stay on top of it, and it's pretty accurate breakdown of each state's individual service dog laws. So please take advantage of that resource in the PTS Dog group. That's why it's there. If you're not a member of the PTS Dog group, please join. It's open to everybody. It's a place where we can get deeper into discussion than we do on the main page about training and had a no shit day and things like that. Let's see. Trying to see if there are any other questions here. Going back to the going back to the fake service dog problem. Again, it's not a dog problem. Dogs aren't the issue. People are the issue. One thing we need to be really careful about is we're not service dog police. When I go into a store to do my shopping with my service dog, I'm there to get a mission done, not to police other people. If there's another dog in the store that is creating an issue, I will go find somebody in the management team and ask them to have the dog removed. If they say, well, I can't do that, it's a service dog, I will explain the law to them. But it's not my job. I don't want to get into an altercation. And, I don't want to get their dog involved in an altercation. I know I can rely on my dog's training, but I don't know what their dog's training's like. But otherwise, you know what? If there's another dog in the store and that dog is being disruptive, just make sure yours isn't. Again, as handlers, one of our primary goals is personal responsibility. We're responsible for that dog's behavior when we walk into a store with that dog beside us. And that's who we're responsible for, no one else. I can't make these idiots who take Fifi the Wonder Poodle in, do the training that's necessary if they think that Fifi's actually a service dog. And it's not my job to. Let the managers, and that's just the thing with the ADA. Stores have the right to ask disruptive animals to be removed. It's their right. It's there in the law. If a dog is disruptive, you can ask that the animal be removed, but you cannot deny the person services. So you can't say, well, you can't shop here because your dog's misbehaving. You can say, your dog can't be in here. And you know what? Skeeter's had a bad day. He had a terrible day where I made the decision. I took him out. I said, that's enough. This isn't working. We'll have to come back later. And I left. That's that personal responsibility thing. That's that activity of handling your dog. It's the right thing to do. And another thing, while we're getting on that fake service dog issue, is, again, with the registries and the identifications. If you've bought one, because although your dog is legitimate, it just makes things easier when people question you and you whip out that little registration card. Think about it does to the rest of us who know better and don't have one. Yeah, that made that instance for you easier. But then when I come in and I know my rights and I understand the law and I know that the registration is not legitimate or required, and I tell them that, they say, well, the last guy had one, so you must be fake. When it's in fact the exact opposite. Usually the guys whipping them out are the fake ones. Okay? So think about that. Think about the effect it has when you use, Doc, we need to talk. After this, hit me up on the page, Doc. We'll talk. It makes it harder. Yeah, you're right, Sandy. It makes it harder. It makes it harder for those of us who understand the law, know better, and don't use a fake service dog ID because they begin to expect it. They expect that dog to be registered. Don't do it. Don't do it. And remember, using a service dog is a right guaranteed under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is a civil right. Okay? When you're talking about being refused service because of your service dogs, what you're doing is you're actually talking about being refused your civil rights. It is the same as being refused service because of the color of your skin. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of an ethical person, it is exactly the same as somebody saying, we don't serve Mexicans in here to me. Okay? It's the same. It is ableism instead of racism, but it's just as ugly. Think about it in those terms. Using a service dog, you have the right to, just the same as you have the right to use a wheelchair or a cane or hearing aids or any one of another, 100, an oxygen tank, dialysis pump, an insulin pump. It's durable medical equipment. And what they're telling you is you can't come in here because of your medical equipment. Well, that's wrong. Now, there are places you can't take your service dog. You can't go into the kitchen at a restaurant. That being said, I know a veteran who's a chef who talked to his boss and set it up, and they had a corner in the kitchen for the dog that kept the dog far enough away from the food that it didn't violate health codes. You can work around that so that you can use your service dog. It's been done. But, if you're coming in off the street to buy dinner, you're not going to want to take your dog into the kitchen. But what I'm saying is, understand that it's your civil rights as an American citizen that are being infringed on with all these pushes for registration. That's being infringed on when you're told you can't bring that dog in here. Then that's not to say if your dog's not behaving that you should get blustery and start screaming civil rights. Okay, be responsible. Understand your dog's behavior is your responsibility. And if your dog's having an off day, don't take them. There have been days and places where Skeeter just doesn't go. Because I know, look, it's simple as this. I don't take Skeeter into the liquor store, not because he can't go into a liquor store, but because Skeeter's a happy dog and he's friendly and he wags his tail. And his tail is a freaking baseball bat. And I really don't want to pay for $3,000 of liquor because he whacked the aisle with his tail because somebody talked to him. It's just a smart thing. It's understanding the equipment that you're using. Do I think he'd go in and start wagging his tail? No. But if he did, again, I can't pay for $3,000 worth of liquor because he knocked it over with his tail. Be smart about how you use your dog. Grocery shopping? Yeah, absolutely, I'll take him. It's crazy in those stores. Tina, you're right. The only places that are affected by the ADA are places that fall under Titles 2 and 3 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. One of the places that is exempt is a church. Churches are not required to follow the ADA. Most churches will. but they are not required to. And a church can refuse entrance to your service dog legally. There's a way around that. Call ahead of time. Talk to the pastor. Ask if it's okay. Do you really want to go to a church that isn't going to allow you to use your medical equipment? I don't. It's that simple. You should be doing a little investigation if you're going to go to a church anyway, in my opinion. Call ahead. Ask. It never hurts to ask. The worst thing they can tell you is no. Okay, next church. There's probably 30 of them in the phone book. Kimberly, that's cool. She says, for churches, I recommend contacting the leadership in advance to find out their preferred protocol. Our priest will walk service dogs through the church and explain how to take communion, and participate easily. That's awesome. That's really neat to see. There are definitely churches and organizations that will work with you. Absolutely. And again, the worst thing they can tell you if you ask is no. And you can just find another church. Because if I'm not welcome there with my medical equipment, then I'm not going to feel welcome there personally. Plain and simple. The other place that's exempt from the ADA is the VA. Hate to break it to you, but the VA does not fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act. However, VA policy, as published in October or August, in the fall of 2015, is that they will follow the ADA. That's the national policy. Individual VA directors still can do whatever they want and make their own rules, but the national policy is that the VA will follow the ADA. So if your VA is being discriminatory, print out that national policy. You can find it in the files on the in the PTS dog group. It's right there, VA policy. Print it out. I think it's about 6 pages. Take it in and ask them why they're not following national policy. Go stand up for yourself and your rights. Remember that although the VA does not fall under the ADA, we as American citizens are still protected by it. It's our health care, and we have the right to use our medical equipment. If you need help fighting with the VA over that, I'll be glad to write some formal letters. Contact the page, and we'll work together on that. Yeah, the fight with the VA is real. Nathan, you're right. The military does not have to follow the ADA. Remember when you signed up, when you raised your hand and you volunteered, you signed away a lot of your rights. You became property of the government. We all did. That being said, there are a few active duty military members, 2 that I know of, maybe 3, who are finishing out their time to retirement with a memorandum of understanding and a memorandum of MOE, which of course I can't remember what that stands for, in place between them, their command, their doctors, and the training organization. And they are able to finish out their final. One of them is an senior Army enlisted who is able to finish out his retirement with the service dog on active duty. It can be done. If you need to do it, I can put you in touch with the right people to work through that MOE issue. It's not something I'm personally involved with, but I know who is. Honestly, if you're active and you're disabled, the military has the right to retire you. This guy was lucky. The one that I know of, there are 2 of them, but one I know a little more of the story, was lucky that his command was willing to work with him and saw him as being valuable enough in order to work that out with his command. It's a tricky thing, but it's doable. Doc, that's a good question, and I'm not sure. I think federal buildings fall under Title III. I'll have to open up the law and look it up, Doc. Again, we need to talk after this is over. That's about it for the day. Sorry I got a little ranty, but I see all these people pushing for registration, and I got to tell you, it just chaps my ass. It's a bad idea, and it's going to screw disabled people if it happens, because then they're going to take more rights away, and we don't want that. We don't want that. We have to, as service dog handlers, we have to fight everywhere we go anyway. We don't want to make it harder. Quick update, the book is essentially done. The editor and I are working on a couple of things. He wants me to write a conclusion, and then there's an interview I've got to tuck in there. But we have a very tentative date to go to publication of Mother's Day. I'm not nailing that down. Don't hold me to that, but tentatively we should be ready to publish by Mother's Day. I will, as soon as that occurs, make sure that the links to buy the book are available everywhere. It will be in print. It will be electronic, probably a month or two after print. I would like to encourage you to buy a printed copy of the book. If you want to buy a signed copy of the book, there will be a method to do that here on the PTS Dog page. They will be signed by me and kind of by Skeeter. I'm making a stamp out of a mold of his paw print, so he'll sign them too. So look for around Mother's Day, there being a big announcement about books being available for purchase. Also, T-shirts. Everybody's screaming they want T-shirts, and they want a red T-shirt with PTS Dog logo on it. I'm working on it. I've got to talk to DV6 at Dysfunctional and see if they want to partner again or if I need to go another way. The pre-order went well, but it could have gone better. I don't have the mechanism to print and maintain stock for myself. DV does, so working with them was very helpful, but they need shelf space for their shirts, which is why we did a pre-order. So I'm working on it. I should have an announcement about T-shirts soon. Phase 2, don't forget about the radio show, the Service Dog Show with PTS Dog. I hope will air tonight. There's been a little illness in the DV radio community. If it doesn't air, please don't be upset, but hopefully it will air tonight. If not, it will air next Sunday. I've got a couple more episodes in the bag. If you want to be a part of the radio show, contact the page. Phase 2, I've already got a children's book planned, and then a third book, which will be just the stories of veterans and their service dogs, nothing else. Won't talk about the law, none of that. We're just going to tell guys' stories and ladies' stories. That's my next. That may be my next book project. There's another project I can't talk about that's also in the works. You can't buy Skeeter 6. Not going to happen. Look, guys, we have a lot of work to do. Education, sharing the information. When you buy the book, buy 2 or 3 copies because you all know somebody who needs a copy of it. That's the reason I'm writing this book, is because people need to understand the law. And it's in there, and it's explained as best I can. And I linked, I share the resources, where to find that law so you can read it with your own eyes. It's in there. So I would like to urge you, thank you all for the support, the continued support. And I would like to urge you, please, when it comes out, buy it. Buy a copy for your friend. Buy a copy for your friends, cousins, brothers, uncles, nieces, great-grandma who takes Fifi the Wonder Poodle everywhere and doesn't understand why it's a problem. Buy it for a veteran who needs to find a service dog and doesn't even know where to start. I'll be giving them away left and right for that very reason. This is weighing on me. This is a heavy. This whole argument with the fake service dog thing and these laws coming on the books, this is bothering me. We're stepping backwards here. We got to guarantee to exercise freedom with the ADA, and now because people are unethical, it's getting taken away from us. And this is a treatment option. This is a part of a treatment plan that has a very valid, very real effect in a PTSD sufferer's life. We need to fight this. We need to fight for education, not regulation. Education is going to solve this, folks. Regulation's not going to do anything but make it harder for disabled people to do something that's already very hard. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your weekend. Appreciate you all, and happy St. Patrick's Day a day late.